What's good, Raider Nation? Welcome back to Vegas Nation, First and 10, your weekly go-to for Raider news and analysis. I'm Vinny Bonsignore. I cover the Raiders for the Las Vegas Review-Journal and VegasNation.com. To my left is my good friend and colleague Adam Hill, who also covers the Raiders and everything else for the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Vegas Nation. Before we get to Adam and I and our thoughts about what's going on in Raider Nation and the world of the Raiders, just want to remind everybody that all Vegas Nation podcasts are brought to you by the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Station Casinos STN Sports. We thank them for their great support over the years. And Adam Hill, I guess the big news of the week or over the last 7 days or so was the signing of Geno Smith, and we finally got a chance to meet Geno Smith. I was impressed with what Geno had to say, kind of his maturity and his demeanor, and you could tell that this is a player that's been through it, on seen both sides of everything, and I think is a mature player, and that certainly came across when the Raiders finally introduced him to the media on Monday after he signed his contract. What was it? The Thursday before.
Yeah, I thought, for sure. I mean, said the right things. I think, you expect that from a guy who's been around the league a long time, been a veteran, and especially a quarterback who's faced the media so many times. I think the thing that stood out more to me from that, gathering with the media, that kind of mini press conference that they had, was just the respect that he has for Pete Carroll and that Pete Carroll has for him, the relationship that they had. We knew that was a thing because that's part of what drove that whole deal to take place. But just to see them together and their interaction and how closely bonded they are, I think was the big takeaway for me.
Yeah, it was for me as well. Pete had alluded to it, obviously, and so has Geno in some of his past comments. And it just kind of felt, Adam, like this was one of those things that the coach and the player kind of, willed into existence, so to speak. This was not a certainty by any stretch of the imagination. Remember, Geno was under contract with the Seattle Seahawks and presumably working toward a new contract extension with them. But I don't know. You can poke holes in this if you want. But I do wonder, and my thought is that once Pete Carroll became the head coach of the Raiders, I think a seed was probably dropped into the head of Geno Smith about, I wonder what it would be like reuniting with Pete Carroll now with the Raiders. And I'm sure Pete Carroll had the same kind of thoughts, knowing what the situation was in Seattle for Geno, and they kind of made this happen.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think also, let's also be, and not to be cynical in that it's business and all those things, but he was working on a contract with Seattle, and there weren't a whole lot of options beyond Seattle, and all of a sudden, okay,
yes, exactly.
Either I can go make money with the Raiders and be happy and play with Pete Carroll, or Seattle's going to have to pay me, or know that there's an option out there for me. And I think that, and they could have kept him under the contract. I suppose that could have happened. That probably wasn't going to ever happen. So, that was another option out there that was, hey, I'm totally willing to go to the Raiders. I would love to go to the Raiders, unless you want to pay me a lot of money here in Seattle. And that's kind of how these things work sometimes. I mean, sometimes options are the best negotiators, and that's kind of what happened for Geno. Not that I think he was happy either way. I think if Seattle would have paid him a ton of money, he would have been happy.
I think just to push back a little bit on that, I think what he ultimately signed for the with the Raiders for was on the table from Seattle.
Potentially,
I think it was.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a chance. I mean, it sounded like he wanted. Didn't Darnold get significantly more?
No.
Let's see what his final deal was, because the way it breaks down, this is really a 2-year deal for Geno.
Yeah.
Kind of the same thing there. So yeah, I mean, he wanted stability for sure, but yeah, that's possible too. And maybe they weren't willing to give him what they gave Darnold, and maybe that was his problem too. Like, I know what you're going to pay Sam Darnold. Like, I kind of want that. Who knows exactly how it played out, but I think it did open up options for him, no question about it. And he knew as soon as Pete Carroll took this job, that was an option. And it wouldn't have been, if Pete Carroll was talking to Chicago at one point, probably wouldn't have been the option there.
Definitely not.
But when it was the Raiders and when it was a quarterback needy situation, that's kind of where things kind of sparked a little bit.
I got I do the weekly mailbag for Vegas Nation, which will you could go to Vegas Nation to check it out. And there was a question that was posed to me, which was, why would the Raiders, pay $66 million? It's really, at this point, about $56 million, and that's the $40 million that he's getting paid this year. between the salary and a signing bonus, and then also 18 and change million dollars of his 2026 $26 million salary. So they're in on him for over $50 million, period, without him taking one snap. And the suggestion was, it's obvious that the Raiders are going to draft their quarterback of the future in the draft. And the insinuation was that Smith was going to start half of this year. And then the successor who they draft is going to take over for him halfway through this. I'm like, stop it. The Raiders didn't just pay $56 million to Geno Smith for half of a season of starter Geno Smith. The more likely path, and I'll get your thoughts on this, is that he's going to be the starter here for the next 2 years. The next part of his 2026 salary, which gets guaranteed the third day of the new league year in 2026, is going to kick in. He's going to be the starting quarterback next year as well. And then I think after 2 years, the Raiders will size up the situation, whether to move forward with Geno or whether they believe if they even draft somebody between now and then.
Oh, they better.
Which they will. They will. I'm just saying, you never know. It might be this year. It could be next year. But whoever they do draft between this year's draft and next year's draft, if that quarterback's going to be ready heading into 2027, that will be the decision on whether they stay with Geno Smith or move on to their quarterback. There's no way that they just paid him $56 million for half of a season of Geno Smith.
Well, I don't think that's their plan.
No.
Their plan is that he's the quarterback and that they're in the playoffs. I mean, that's their
Right.
plan. I mean, I don't think that's realistic, but that's their plan, is what they want to have.
Mm-hmm.
What I think could change that, and to the point that the question was, I think the question is faulty on its surface, because I
Right.
do think they're going to draft what they hope is their quarterback
I
of the
agree.
future, or at least bring in
Yeah.
a quarterback to develop in the future. It'd be malpractice not to at some point.
No,
in the
of
next
course.
2 years.
I'm with you on that.
So they should draft somebody. What Geno Smith does is make it so you don't have to do it with the 6th pick. You don't have to do it in the second round either. Like, you have flexibility to say, hey, at some point we can find a quarterback to develop. We don't have to do it. It's not a necessity. It's not the most pressing need on the roster. We have a little bit of time. And even if it is, hey, we have to wait till next year or see how the market plays out, like, you have a little bit of time. You have a little bit of flexibility.
What you
to do
also
that.
have is the time to develop that quarterback.
Sure, and that's the other thing, that you don't have to draft a quarterback that can play today, right? And it goes back to, and I've talked about this several times on the podcast, but I'm very fascinated by the 2023 Tampa Bay Buccaneers that John Spytek was a part of, and that he's talked extensively about, where they needed a quarterback immediately. They needed somebody to step in and play. And they were able to find
Tom Brady.
So they were able to find Baker Mayfield at a reasonable price. He actually played really well. But what they did around him was they said, hey, we usually draft guys that we can develop. We need to draft guys that can play now. Older players that have played a lot in college. We need to draft guys that can play right now, step on the field and play. And it took away, and they did a good job of it, but it took away their usual strategy of, hey, we can develop guys, we can, see where they go. In this case, they didn't want to be forced into, we need somebody that can start day one. Like, where are we going to find that guy? It's no panic. Hey, if it's a Jalen Milroe who might not be ready right away, if it's, a guy like that.
Will Howard,
who might take some time to develop, you can take that guy because you have Geno Smith as a starter. Now, to the point of he's here for half a year, don't think that's the case, but if the Raiders are out of contention, week 10, week 11, they're 3-8 or whatever their bye is, 2-8 at some point, something like that. Okay, now maybe you're like, all right, Geno, take a step back,
and that's justifiable.
Let the guy come right, and that's probably how you should handle it. But
you're not planning on him.
I don't think the plan is to be out of contention in week 11 and bringing a new guy in, but that could change things. So that's where you are right now.
By the way, Baker Mayfield and Adam will back me up on this. We shared a ride to Los Angeles for a Thursday night game, and Baker Mayfield had been in the Rams building for a day.
Yeah.
And Adam was adamant that he was done. He was cooked. There was no more future for Baker Mayfield. I'm like, don't sleep on Baker Mayfield. I mean, I didn't expect him to do what he did in the fourth quarter in that game. Number one, that was all on the Raiders and Jerry Tillery, by the way.
Yeah.
But I did believe that Baker Mayfield there was something salvageable with Baker Mayfield. Say what you want, he's got a ceiling and all that. But I still think there was a decent quarterback in there, and he's proof that there's life on the other side sometimes. And it's also proof. And I think Geno Smith is a clear example of this. If getting in the right situation, getting some good coaching, and getting some time to maybe develop and sit back a little bit, which is what Baker Mayfield got, when he went to Los Angeles and was under Sean McVay. So he was kind of ready-made there for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but a shrewd move by John Spytek. And your point is well taken, because I think that's the draft process. I think that's the draft plan for this year, is to draft players that can help them right now. There's going to be some long-range development guys as well, but I think early in the draft, especially that first round, is going to be somebody that's going to immediately help what they hope could be a playoff team this year, or somebody that can knock on that door. Much like what John Spytek helped oversee in Tampa Bay.
I mean, I feel it's interesting because I feel like their off season, which I would think I actually think is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Most people think is bad because I don't think they got significantly better.
Right.
But it seems like their off season is planning for the future. Like they've played for the future. So I do think the draft would kind of be about the future. Now, with the 6th pick, you want somebody that's going to impact you right now.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to draft a developmental piece at number 6. But I think with the rest of the draft, I think you can take developmental pieces because I think you are setting yourself up for the future. I don't think they made a bunch of moves that were like, hey, we need to compete for a playoff spot right now. It was, we're building for a future. We're building for flexibility for the future. We're not committing long term. We're bringing in guys that are going to be good right now and can play and make us competitive. But we're not worried about throwing like, hey, we don't need to have 5 impact players in free agency with all this money we have because we're ready right now. They know that they're not ready.
I agree. Well, whether they are or not, I do think that they think that there's a chance that they can compete this year with the Elandon Roberts, with the Jeremy Chins, with the Devin Whites, with the guys that they brought in on the short-term deal tells me that they're thinking along the bigger picture on short-term deals. But they brought in guys that they feel like for this year can help them win games right now. And I don't know what that ceiling is, but I can't rule out 9 wins or 10 wins, not with what I believe that they have and what they're going to bring in the draft. I do think 9 or 10 wins is possible for them. It's not going to light the world on fire. You're not going to win the Super Bowl, but you can be competitive and give your starved fans a good season, but still not lose sight of that future because the contracts that they gave up or they gave in free agency are conducive to, hey, thank you for the memories. Thank you for helping us this year win some football games. We're going to quickly move on from you because we drafted your replacement right behind you.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple ways to look at it. I think they're not overcommitting to some bad long-term deals that are going to have them, hampered for a long time. Like, yeah, these guys, if everything works out right, if everything goes well, they could compete for a playoff spot. But I think that they're locked into, hey, we're planning for most of these guys to be gone, new blood to be in here, younger players developing, and really setting up for a successful future, which I think is the right way to do it.
When we watch them in training camp coming up, do you think we're going to be having the discussions that we had at last year's training camp about how awful the offense was?
No.
I don't think that there's a snowball's chance, and what.
It's also going to be a Chip Kelly offense.
Well, that too, but I think the quarterback is going to be better. I think the offensive line grew as the year went on. It's not going to be as bad as it kind of. And by the way, Colt Miller wasn't out there during training camp last year. JPJ wasn't out there for most of training camp either. So, but just strictly from the quarterback position, it's not going to look like it did in last. Remember, all I know is we had conversation after conversation during training camp last year. Wrote about it, talked about it, and in every medium that we do this, and it was just like this offense is really bad.
Yeah, it was terrible.
And I don't anticipate that happening this year. And I think the floor that has been created will give them a much better chance. I'm not saying that they're going to go to the playoffs at all, but man, I think there's going to be some better football, at the very least, played at Allegiant Stadium next year from the offensive standpoint.
Yeah, well, we can, obviously we'll hear from Chuck Esposito in a little bit, and people that have that same opinion can probably make a lot of money on that because, as we talked about, the Raiders are projected to be the 2nd worst team in the NFL right now.
Yeah, that's
so
interesting.
If you do think that they're going to be, and again, I shouldn't say 2nd worst because based on schedule and those sort of things, the 2nd lowest win total in the league they are right now. So that you could be a better team in a better division, or worse team in a better division, that sort of thing. But not a whole lot of faith in what the Raiders have done this offseason in terms of the sports books, but they do believe in. I think that's underestimating the changes that the coaching staff could make too.
And by the way, I'd love to go back and look at some of the win totals going into seasons for the Seattle Seahawks post. Well, a couple, by even some that covered Russell Wilson, but certainly post Russell Wilson. I would like to see what the win totals. We could probably look that up at some point to find out going into the 2022 season. Right, that was the year that Russell Wilson got traded to Denver, wasn't it? Whatever year that Russell Wilson left Seattle, what the win total was for them, because this feels like there's a Pete Carroll, for whatever reason, in the teams that he's worked for, makes some moves that it's hard to maybe buy into sometimes from probably a betting standpoint and a fan standpoint. But he has a tendency for it to all. It has a tendency for it to all work out. As Adam looks that up, we are going to go to our own Heidi Fang and Chuck Esposito from STN Sports Station Casinos, because they're going to talk about draft props for the Raiders. Heidi, Chuck, take it away.
And joining us now on the Vegas Nation First and 10 podcast, we have the race and sportsbook director from Station Casinos, Chuck Esposito, in for his weekly segment. And we have a special surprise for you. I'm really excited to talk about it. The release of some of the props that will be available at all of the Station Casinos leading up to and probably during, right, Chuck, the NFL draft. So everyone, you can now get that information right here on this podcast. Chuck, first of all, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Heidi. You're right. I mean, we put our first kind of roll of the props out there. It's a lot of fun. We don't always do well to them, but I'm a draftnik. I've told you I love the draft. To me, it's a great soap opera for guys, I guess, and for all the sports fans. But our guests and the bettors really love the props. Everybody's asking about the draft. I think every show you watch is about the draft now. So we took our shot at it, and we'll see how it goes.
Well, one of them that has me very intrigued is, what position will the Raiders draft first? Right now you have running back as the favorite. Down the list, I think you have quarterback. I'm really intrigued by the value that you can get with some of those other positions if you don't think that the Raiders are going to go with a running back. Particularly, I'm sure we're talking about Ashton Jeanty, the Boise State Bronco, at 6. So, Chuck, where do you think you can see the most value in this prop for a Raiders fan?
Yeah, wide receiver. I know there's so much buzz about running back, and you're right. It's Ashton Jeanty. You look at the Raiders last year, averaging under 80 yards per game. 3.6 yards per carry, second to last with 10 or more, kind of big runs, chunk runs in the league. So they need some help there, but I think they need the help in a lot of other places too. I think Tate McMillan from Arizona would be a great pick at wide receiver. Will Johnson, the corner in that division from Michigan, I think helps. But I think wide receiver or corner for me is the way I see them going. But it was just too tough to pass up on not making running back the favorite choice for the Raiders. Just on everything you kind of hear and see out there. I know there's a lot of smoke screens, but everybody has Jeanty mocked to the Raiders.
So in those top 30 visits, the Raiders have had a slew of quarterbacks in, from Jackson Dart to Shedeur Sanders. I believe Jalen Milroe as well. They've been looking at a lot of different guys coming into the headquarters in the past week or so, and going up to next week. Jeanty was among them. Mason Graham was among them, the defensive lineman out of Michigan. So when you look at some of these names that are coming in for the Raiders, is there any particular one that may stand out to you? Because we're talking about smokescreen as well. So I wanted to know if anyone stood out to you as like, wow, that person would really make a good fit with this team.
Well, I think it's the quarterbacks, but I don't think, they take it with the 6th pick. I think that if you get a Shedeur Sanders or a Jackson Dart or Milroe to drop a bit, I could see a team potentially, and I've said that about the Giants and Browns, that I think they might take a quarterback in the first round, just not at 2 or 3. And I think the same thing with the Raiders at 6. Maybe you trade back in late into the first round and get one of those guys because you have that 5th year. You have him under contract for 5 years, and you get a chance maybe to sit behind Geno for a year or two and really kind of learn the pro game. We saw the success that Aaron Rodgers had, that Jordan Love has had when they sit. It's tough to get thrown into it as a rookie quarterback, but I still think these rookie quarterbacks, if one of these guys slides a bit, some of these quarterback needy teams have to really think about trading back up late into the first round to maybe grab one of these guys.
I love that you talked about trades because I saw that was another prop that you sent me, and the trades and the
You paid
possibilities.
attention. Very good.
Yes, of course. When you look at that and you think, okay, what has been the amount of trade activity in the first round that could warrant like some of those deeper bets where you're looking at some of the longer odds and you think, okay, well, maybe there could be 3 trades in the first round. I mean, a lot of people have said, what if the Raiders trade down? What if the Raiders trade back, go lower in the round, later in the round, and go after a quarterback, like you said? What are the odds? What do they tell you typically in terms of, like, let's say an average number of trades? What's the average number of trades that would happen in the first round of an NFL draft?
It's strange to say this, but it really jumps around a lot. Usually it's kind of in that maybe 4 to 6 range in the first round. But I think when there's a year like this where you've got just kind of Cam Ward, who looks to be the projected #1 overall pick at quarterback. We know it's a quarterback-driven league, and there's so many teams that kind of need a quarterback, but maybe aren't ready to take one in the top 10. And maybe you could see more trades this year. That we've heard that Jalen Milroe is going to attend the draft. Why are you attending the draft unless you've kind of got a feel that maybe I might go sometime in the first round? Jackson Dart's been getting a lot of kind of moving up the draft board. Sanders, the Saints are interested, the Jets, the Raiders, the Steelers maybe. So I think there's the potential for a lot of movement, especially if 2 or 3 of these quarterbacks starts to drop a bit. I think it'll open up where we see a lot of trades this year.
All right. That's great stuff, Chuck. And I wanted to wrap it up here because I don't want to give out all of the props. I think fans can find it right now on the STN app. I wanted to give you also the opportunity to tell fans about some of these props, what other ones they might be able to look for before I let you go and we catch up and do more of these next week.
Well, I know we touched on the Raiders, but I think there's like 25 different teams right now that we have the index up of who you think will be their first overall pick from a position standpoint. Mr. Irrelevant, we touched on the trades as well, and maybe some individual player kind of over or under numbers we'll be looking to put up as well. This is we're in an information era, so there's a lot out there, and we're looking to put some more stuff up. But the draft's a lot of fun. We know that there's a lot of football guests out there, and for me, the draft is what kicks off the season, so should be exciting just in a couple of weeks.
And I look forward to talking to you leading up to all of it because we're going to keep you covered on all things with the NFL draft as well as getting inside those numbers with Station Casinos. Chuck Esposito, Race and Sportsbook Director for Station Casinos. We appreciate your time.
Our thanks again to Heidi Fang from the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Vegas Nation, and also Chuck Esposito, the Race and Sportsbook Director of Station Casinos, STN Sports. Adam did some homework, and this year's win total for the Raiders right now is...
I saw 5.5 posted.
Okay. So going back to 2022, when Pete Carroll moved on from Russell Wilson and a guy by the name of Geno Smith became their starting quarterback, what was the win total for the Seahawks back in 2022?
6.5.
Yeah, and they won
9.
Yeah, having observed Pete Carroll for many years, there are some maybe what would be considered peculiar moves. Some of the drafts that they had in Seattle were left people scratching their heads. They got panned a lot of times for their draft picks, but it has a tendency to work out for Pete Carroll. He has an eye for talent. He knows how to put it together. And that's why I look at the 5.5 wins. And when you look at their road schedule this year, they go to Philadelphia, playoff team. They go to Washington, playoff team. They go to Houston, a playoff team. Let alone the Chargers, playoff team. The Kansas City Chiefs, a playoff team. The Denver Broncos, a playoff team. So road-wise, it's going to be difficult. Home-wise, they got a pretty manageable schedule with the Tennessee. I think it's the Jacksonville Jaguars are coming to town. It's not a great schedule, or for them, it's a favorable schedule coming in. I would be shocked if they didn't win more than 6 games this year.
Yeah, but I mean that's right where they are.
I think it's going to be 8 to 9.
Yeah.
That's where my floor would be.
Which again, we usually talk about being the worst case scenario for any team.
Yeah.
8 wins is the worst. You'd rather win 2 games than 8.
True.
But I think in this case, what their goals are different. Like they're in a position of saying, we're building a foundation to win going forward. We're trying to get to a certain point. Like we're not necessarily, I think most cases you should be focused on either Super Bowl or the number 1 pick. But like there are steps that are taken in between. I think he thinks it's important in terms of building culture and building what they're trying to do to take that step of winning, building the foundation of winning, and then taking a step moving forward, which, again, I still am conflicted on, but I understand that point of it, that they don't think – you don't want to try to go from 3 wins to, 13 or 14. Like, you want to go – all right, 4, then 8, and then 11. Like, that's what you're trying to build with the Raiders. And I understand the value of that, even though I'm more of a first pick or Super Bowl guy.
Right. But that's a tough, needle to thread. I mean, it's hard to be that bad.
Yeah.
And it's obviously hard to be that.
Well, it hasn't been that hard for the Raiders to be that bad.
But it's actually been impossible.
I know. Well, because they get silly and win games at the end of the year.
Right, because you can't.
They're in the mix for it.
Yeah,
if they would just finish the equation and try to lose.
True. But good luck trying to get that across to players that are playing for their jobs and stuff. That's why it's such a difficult thread to needle. Okay, so this is another question that I got, and I answered this question at Vegas Nation, the Q&A that we did, or the mailbag that we did this week, and it was about Tyrie Wilson, who obviously has not lived up to expectations as the 7th pick overall in the 2023 draft. And the question was, is there any notion to getting rid of Tyrie if they draft a defensive lineman? And I say absolutely not. There's zero upside, only downside really, to getting rid of him. He's already been paid his salary, his signing bonus. He's making just over $1 million in salary this year, right? If you get rid of him, it's going to be, you're still negative $7 million on the savings. There's no savings whatsoever. Short of somebody giving you a compelling offer.
There's two.
That's not going to happen.
There's only 2 reasons to get rid of Tyrie Wilson. And none of them are performance based.
Right.
It's a team comes to you and says, "Hey, he's not working out. Here's a 2nd-round pick."
It's not happening.
So, I'm not suggesting it's going to happen.
Right.
I'm saying then you say, "Oh, okay," or even a third, whatever. If you feel like it's not going to happen for him here, and some team's giving you a pretty high pick, and there's a player, okay, fine, make that. That's one reason. The other reason is if he's an absolute problem, which he has not been.
No.
So neither one of the likely scenario of the actual legitimate potential reasons to get rid of him are going to apply.
Right.
So I would say, why?
Yeah, that's exactly how I answer that question. Why would you give up on him? First of all, you'd be selling. You'd be just giving them away.
Right. You're
one way or another.
Selling low.
Yeah, selling.
You
at
bought
the low
high,
way.
sold low. It doesn't make any sense.
Whereas it's still just his 3rd year. There's recent precedent here anyway with Malcolm Kuntz of popping in his 3rd year. That's what you hope for. Not to say that it's going to happen, but you hold on to him for the hope that does happen. And at the very least, at this point, he's still at least a serviceable role player. Serviceable, with still the opportunity to maybe be something more than that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, would it be a huge loss to the team at this point to move on from him? No. But it just doesn't make any sense from any sort of business perspective of why you would do it.
You would probably hang on to him going into next year and not pick up the 5th-year option, but leave yourself. I guess if he plays really well this year, then you pick up the 5th-year option. That's why you have that luxury going into next year on making that decision. Or if not, you still hold on to him and hope that you get a great season from him in that 4th year, and then deal with that. Positivity after.
Not to bring up a sore subject with people, but if you compare it to the stock market, you bought stock in a company thinking, oh, they're about to come up with this big innovation, like they're going to change the world.
Right.
We're going to buy this stock because the stock's going to soar, and the stock has just kind of plummeted. But there's still that chance that innovation comes through.
Right. Yeah.
And if it does, you want to be the one holding the stock.
Of course.
You don't want to sell it for nothing.
No.
And then at some point, some point, somebody else picks it up and the stock takes off. Maybe it never does.
Right.
Maybe it never comes through. They never,
But you eliminate any chance of it,
by getting
no chance. Okay, so this is before we close out. This is what I've been holding out on you on. All right, so there was a report this week that from Louis Riddick, who is close with the Sanders, Deion Sanders and Shadour Sanders, and lo and behold, all of a sudden, you start hearing from Louis Riddick, I don't know if I'm Deion and Shadour, if I want to be drafted by one of the top 3 teams, in fact, that are drafting. In fact, I think if you talk to Dion and his people and Shedeur's people, they would rather not get drafted by any of the three teams that are drafting 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Screams to me, Adam. I want to get your thoughts on.
Well, it screams that the top 3 teams have told them they're not drafting.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's the old, I'm going to break up with you before you break up with me routine, and make it look like this was all my idea. When in fact, the Giants. Well, forget the Tennessee Titans. They're drafting Cam Ward, but it sure feels like the Browns and Giants are leaving a lot of clues that they are not drafting Shadour Sanders at 2 or 3. Abdul Carter at 3, probably at Travis Hunter maybe at number 2, and that this is them getting out in front of that reality and saying, no, this is our decision. So, but more and more, there's a possibility that Shadour Sanders could be there at number 6. What would you do in that scenario? And I'll tell you what I would do.
Well, I've been saying I want him to be available just for the storyline of what does Tom Brady really feel.
Okay.
Because we know Tom Brady has known him forever, known the family forever. He worked out with him, when he was in high school. First athlete he signed to his NIL deal. He's known him forever.
Right.
So nobody knows better, really. Nobody knows him better or has a better read probably than Brady. And would the Raiders take him or not tells us everything we need to know.
By the way, the same day that report, and it's a great point, the same day that, and I'm fascinated by that question myself, the same day that the Louis Riddick report came out was the same day that the Raiders and Shedeur have at least agreed come out and visit. Yeah. So he's taking a top 30 visit sometime next week. So now, if I'm the Raiders, I'm not sure I'm drafting Shadour Sanders at number 6, although I think Tom Brady will win that day, one way or another.
That's it. We don't know exactly how much Tom Brady day to day. Like there's some people. Does he talk to people every day? Like Pete Carroll first kind of said yes and then said no, and how much he's talking. We know he's involved. We know has a lot of say.
Immense.
But that's his pick.
That is going to be his pick,
and not necessarily his pick.
His decision.
It's his decision whether they take Shedeur or not.
No question.
100%.
No question about it. I think why it would benefit the Raiders though to even be in that position is because I think there might be a team not too far further down in the draft that wants to trade up. You want him on the board
because that opens up. So this goes back to another thing, and I had this debate on the air with somebody else 2 days ago. I believe it's a 5-player draft. And that's only because I'm including the 2 quarterbacks. I think it's really a 4-player draft. If you include Shedeur, it's 5, and you're picking 6th.
Yeah.
Which, that's not a great place to be in. But
Ashton Jeanty's not one of your...
No.
He is for me.
He's a running back.
Yeah.
He's a great player, but he's a running back.
Ultimate weapon.
So when you start to look at it, I would not want to be in the 6th spot. If I'm the Raiders, I want to trade out. But every other team knows the same thing. They're like, wait, you're in the 6th spot. You're in the spot that nobody wants to be in. Why would we trade up? You want to get out for a reason. Why would we trade up with you? If Shedeur is still on the board, now your pick becomes valuable to somebody.
Of course.
We don't know who, but there's going to be a team somewhere out there that wants him.
No, yeah.
And so your pick becomes much more valuable if Shadour Sanders is on the board than if he's not.
Right, exactly. And if Shedeur is not on the board, if somebody takes him, and I think at this point it would almost be a mild surprise to me, Adam, if somebody took him before 6. It'd be a mild surprise. But if somebody does, then if I'm the Raiders, I probably stick and pick, and I probably take Ashton Jeanty or maybe Will Johnson. Or Jalen Walker. They like a couple of the linebackers as well, Jalen Walker being one of them.
Well, to me,
Jalen Walker I'd trade down for.
I think the ideal player for the Raiders to take is Jihad Campbell. But
very good player.
Like Ashton Jeanty, I'm not taking him at 6.
Right.
So that's another reason I want to get out. If you could trade down and get either, I guess, Ashton Jeanty, if you want to include him, or Campbell, or somebody like that by trading down.
Will Campbell, the tackle. Will Johnson, the cornerback.
Sure, the corner. Yeah. If Will Johnson is very good too. If you could trade down and still get one of those guys, you win the draft. That's
for sure.
Unbelievable first round. But I think if you, again, this is where value comes in, and I'm all about value all the time. Like if you traded down and took G.I. Campbell, I think you have a great draft. If you take G.I. Campbell at 6, you had a bad first round.
Right.
Like that to me, that's how important value is. Same with Jeanty. If you take him at 6, I think you lose the first round. If you trade down and get him, then that's a great pick.
All right. The Saints.
Probably
at 9.
would be interested in trading up.
Right. They want to get Shedeur Sanders. Let's just go on that premise. First of all, what are you asking? What are you going to move down? What's the compensation?
Well, I'm trying to see how many picks the Saints have in the draft.
Obviously the pick swap. So I go down to 9. You guys get 6.
So they have 9 picks,
and it's for a quarterback. It would be for a quarterback, and every general manager that I talk to says you pay a tax on the fact you're not coming up to get a defensive tackle. You're coming up to get a quarterback. You're going to have to pay for that.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you would get. Let's see. So they have only 1 second, 1/3. They have a bunch of picks late in the draft. I would probably take the second round pick and maybe second in their second, fourth. Maybe,
would you do a third round pick this year and a number 1 next year?
Yeah, but I don't think they would do that. I don't think they're moving up 3 spots and giving up a first round pick next year. Yes, I'll take it. Of course, sure.
So
absolutely.
Realistically,
yeah, okay. I'll take it.
Yeah. I think anything beyond if you're the Raiders and it's going down to 12, you're getting next year's number 1 pick.
Yeah, if you're going 6 spots.
Yeah.
And there is a chart. Again, I don't want to waste all of our time here doing this by looking up the draft chart, but there is a compensation chart that literally everybody uses now.
So this year's first, this year's second, and maybe a fourth.
They have 2 fourths, so their second, fourth round I think would probably be the right one. But again, I have to look it up for sure.
So the Raiders would get number 9. They would get the Saints' second round pick and the lesser of their 4th round picks.
Sure.
Yeah,
I'll do that.
That'd be a great trade.
And then you probably still get the guy that you probably would have taken at 6,
or among them, one of the guys that you.
If you're not taking Shedeur, I mean now Shedeur's gone, and now only 2 other players are going between you and your next pick. So you're probably getting. If it's me and I have that list of 3 guys that I would take, they can't take all 3.
All right, exactly.
So you'd get one.
They're probably not even taking any of the 1.
Yeah.
But picks 7 and 8 could take 2 of those 3. So there you go. Well, it's going to make for a fascinating night. I actually think that might be a scenario that emerges on draft night. So, but we'll have to wait. We'll have to wait and see. Regardless, I think the Raiders are pretty cognizant of what might be out there for them at this point.
Let's do this on the air because I think people are interested, right? So according to the NFL trade value chart that most people use, and everybody tweaks it a little bit, but the 6th pick is worth 1,600 points. Mm-hmm. The 9th pick is worth 350. So we'd be off. So according to the draft chart, the 9th and the 40th would be a little bit more than enough to get the 6th.
The 9th and the 40th. The 40th would be in the second.
Would be their second round pick. Would be a little bit more. And so if you made them throw in a late 4th or 5th
pick swap, you could do a pick swap.
You'd be and then maybe throw a 7th back to them. Like that would probably work out. But according to the draft chart, the second round pick would be enough to move up to them for them.
To pick up an extra second round pick.
I would do it in a second.
Yeah, because you could easily turn one of those second round picks in a third round or a fourth, maybe into moving back into the first round. There's all kinds of things that you could do with that. So we're getting creative here. That's how we roll, and I have a feeling the Raiders are thinking right along these lines in this particular draft. Because I am with Adam. I would put Ashton in as one of those top 5 players. But I understand why he's reluctant to do that based on the value of running back. But from a pure talent standpoint, absolutely, this dude's the real deal. But we're going to table it for now because we still have, 2 more weeks before the draft. And by the way, just a little shout out. Over at Vegas Nation, we are doing the full breakdowns of the draft. We're taking a look position by position at where the Raiders stand at each position and what they may be looking at, whether it's in the first round, second round, day 3, all of that. If you just go to Vegas Nation, we started with the quarterbacks. We've done running backs.
Sure.
I just did
receivers and tight ends,
and so on and so forth for the rest of the next foreseeable future. So go check that out at Vegas Nation if you want to get an idea of where the Raiders roster looks right now, where they might need help, and who they may turn to for that help in the draft. Until then, enjoy those stories. Thank you for your support. You're why we do this. Go check us out at vegasnation.com. Keep hitting the like button on YouTube. Send a subscription to one of your buddies or a family member. It makes for a great gift. We appreciate that. We want to say thanks to the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Station Casinos STN Sports for all of their supports. Enjoy the weekend. We'll be back at it next week.